Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about a Savage Worlds setting called Rippers. Rippers is a Victorian horror game, and this is set in the classic Victorian era of horror. Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Jack the Ripper, the Frankenstein's monster, the Jewish golem, the Invisible Man, Captain Nemo. Every single Victorian horror and science fiction trope you can think of is in this game. Van Helsing, his entire covey of assistants, all of them are present. And there's a reason that the game's called Rippers, because these people, this League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, if you will, has discovered that they can take the monsters that they hunt and tear from their flesh the very essence of what they are and incorporate it into their own forms. They can do it temporarily in elixirs, potions, ointments, snuff, that temporarily grant them certain abilities. Or they can take a more radical step and they can have them surgically implanted inside their bodies, granting them defenses and creature types and modes of travel, things like that they would not normally have as human beings. Now, the game also introduces a new secondary characteristic known as Reason. Now, Reason is a +0 for your average person, and it can go up and down depending on different abilities and hindrances, edges, and if you have any Ripper tech in your body. Because if you have Ripper tech, your Reason goes down. If you have no Ripper tech, your Reason can never go below 0. But it can go below 0 if you have Ripper tech. Essentially, the Reason trait gives the game the essential cyberpunk version of cyberpsychosis in a Victorian setting. Now, the default concept in this campaign idea is that you are a monster hunter of some variety. And opposing you as a monster hunter, as one of the Rippers, is a loose group of individuals known as the Cabal. And the Cabal is comprised of the big baddies, Dracula, Jack the Ripper, and the minions of generic werewolves and vampires, psychological nutbags, serial killers, things like that. All kind of working together, possibly working against each other, opportunities for player characters to use the enemy against themselves. The book gives a nice little thumbnail background of a number of different places around the world. Just enough information so you can get some nice ideas. A nice selection of Ripper tech that you could use as your rules for adapting Ripper tech by what kind of characteristic monster has, and being able to take those characteristics, those traits, out of the monsters and use it as Ripper technology. The book is broken up into a player section and a GM section. There's also kind of a meta plot in the back of the book, which is broken up into nice little sections. So you could very easily pluck a section out, use it, or ignore that section and go to somewhere else, or mix them up. There doesn't necessarily have to be done in a linear order. It's kind of nice. There's also a random generation section for coming up with storyline ideas. I've seen a number of these in Savage World games, and I've never been disappointed with them, but the best is still The Day After Ragnarok. That random plot generation was the best I've ever read, ever, in any gaming product. Go see my review of that. Go get that product. Now, if you want to do a Rippers campaign, I cannot stress enough that you need to get your hands on Deadlands Reloaded for Savage Worlds, because that will enhance the Rippers campaign so much, especially if you want to do adventuring in the U.S., because the selection of U.S.-themed creatures and encountered and people is just so rich. Not to mention the steampunk technology in there. It's just such an incredible resource. I would consider it an absolute fundamental resource for a Rippers campaign. You take those two products, you marry them together, you're going to have a rocking good time. So I definitely suggest that the Rippers is a fun Victorian horror setting. It's got a fright, mechanics in there, which also affects the character's reason. So, all plays off against each other. I think it's a nice version of kind of like the Call of Cthulhu kind of mechanics that you might see. I haven't read Realms of Cthulhu yet for Savage World. That is in my to-do list. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But yeah, Rippers is definitely worth your time. I suggest it to anyone who enjoys Savage World in general, and if you just like the kind of steampunk Victorian era horror genre, you might want to read it anyway. It might just give you some nice ideas. Even if you're not a big fan of Savage World, it's a generic enough system that you should be able to port over ideas to whatever system you prefer. So yeah, Rippers, well worth your time.